Howdy everybody, Steve here, KM9G. Today is the day that we get the Yaesu FT-818 onto FT8 using the DigiRig. This is probably one of the smallest radio sound cards I have seen, and this includes cat control and sound card and a USB-C connector and handles all of your... It does some pretty amazing things, and it does it for just about any radio you want to throw at it, as long as you get the right cables for it. If you've seen one of my How to FT8 videos before, these videos get to be a little bit long. There are chapters down below where you can skip ahead to the section that you need to know the most about instead of watching the full long play video. I don't want to waste your time, but if you do need all the information, it's all here. And there's a little bit of tips and tricks sprinkled throughout the whole thing. So either way you want to do it works for you, but don't take a look at this video and think, oh, this is too long, I'm out of here, because I got you, fam. Let's go over to the bench and take a look at how this thing gets all plugged together. All right, today we're going to use the DigiRig mobile device, which would indicate there might be a DigiRig desktop device coming out in the future. I don't know. USB-C on one end, and then audio and serial on the other end, and it comes with a bunch of different cables. This is the USB-C cable that plugs into the computer, and this is a fairly high quality cable. You've got dual ferrites on here for choking out stray RFI, and it's a decent length to get the job done, so I like that. Then you have highly specific radio cables. This will work on any of the FT8X series radios. So you have an 8-pin connector for your cat control and data connection for your push to talk. And then you have a 6-pin connector, and this is where all of the audio in and out signals go. And on the other end, they are color coded, so it's going to be really hard to mess that up on the DigiRig side of things. So the black cable goes in the black hole, the green cable goes in the green hole, the USB-C cable goes in the USB-C hole, and then all the rest of this stuff gets hooked up. This goes to the USB port on your computer. And if you needed a USB-C to USB-C, he's got you covered on the website there. And then let's take a look at how this plugs in to the back of the radio. This is our FT-818, the Doomsday radio. This thing has been a lot of fun to play with. It is so tiny for how much stuff they've packed into this little box. This is an amazing radio. I'm really enjoying playing with this radio. So on the back side of the radio, we have a data connection and an accessory connection. And like I mentioned earlier, we have data and accessory cables. So we're going to take the one that has the 8-pin cable, and we're going to plug it into the 8-pin port. We're going to take the one that has the 6-pin cable, and we're going to plug it into the 6-pin port. And that's all there is. It's fairly straightforward. This radio doesn't have a whole bunch of extra connectors that have the same type of pinouts, so there's nothing to worry about there. We're good to go.
As usual, all the links, that's a hard thing to say. As usual, links for everything will be down in the description below. Now I understand where Porky Pig gets it from. This is the WSJT-X website. This is where you go and get the software. Depending on your platform is depending on what software you're going to get. I am doing this on Linux, but the method of installing the software is kind of like the little tiniest part of this. Everything else in this video applies to whatever operating system you're on, whether it's Raspberry Pi or Windows or Mac OS. So we're going to go down into the download section of the website. And all I did was scroll down the page. That went by really fast. There is a Windows choice. There is a Linux choice. There is a Mac OS choice. You can download it in source code form and compile it, or browse the source code and make your own version if you wanted to. There's a whole lot of stuff going on here. I am doing this on a Linux machine, so I am going to download the Linux version of this software. And I'm also running this on Linux Mint, which is a flavor of Ubuntu, which is a flavor of Debian. So I would grab the WSJT-X 254 AMD64.deb for Debian file and take it from there. Once we get the software downloaded, we gotta get it installed. That's kind of an exercise that's outside of the purpose of this video, but it's fairly straightforward. If you're this far into this thing, then you probably know how to install software already. If not, let me know. I'll make a video on how to install software. Let's go into the software itself, WSJT-X. When it pops up, it's going to give you this little about box that tells you the software, etc., etc. And down in the bottom corner, it's kind of a little bit hidden because it just kind of blends in, is a don't show me this again. I'm going to check that, and it's not going to show me that anymore, I think. Did I check that right, or did I miss it? I feel like I missed it. No, I got it right. Okay, so it doesn't come up the second time. I'm going to arrange my screen a little bit to the way that I like running WSJT-X. This lower screen here is the waterfall screen. That will become very useful later on in the video, but not quite yet. And then I make this the same size as the waterfall screen. But this is all stuff that you can fully customize and personalize to your own liking, which is the fantastic part about ham radio. We're going to do a lot of experimenting in here, and I'm going to tell you a couple of different places where you can make a couple of different settings changes, and it won't really affect your ability to make contacts, but it will make your life easier or harder. Now that we have the software downloaded, let's go through the settings tab. And I'm going to choose file menu, and I'm going to choose setting. On the opening page, it wants to know your call sign. You should know your call sign by now. I'm going to put in my grid square. How do you find out what your grid square is? We go back to the website, and there is this whatsmylocator.co.uk. Fantastic website. I'm going to type in my town name, Luck, Wisconsin. I'm going to hit search. I love it when it does that. And we are right in on Luck, Wisconsin, and my grid square is EN35SN. Maidenhead grid squares are huge. They go on for several placeholders, characters way out, and it will actually get all the way down onto the tip of your head if you decide to go that far with grid squares. WSJT-X is happy with 4. It's also happy with 6. I'm going to give it 6. And then message generation for type 2 compound call sign holders, full call and text 3. That's fine. There's a whole bunch of stuff on this page, and if you don't understand what any of this stuff is, just hover over it for a little bit and you'll get a tooltip that will tell you what each individual option means. I'm going to show you the things that I use when I do this. I don't do that. I do a line between decodes. I display distance in miles because I'm in the US and miles makes more sense to me. Transmit messages to the RX frequency window. That's fine. Show DXCC, grid and work before status. That's good. Show principal prefix instead of country name. That's good. I do this double click on call sets TX enable, and I do this allow TX frequency changes while transmitting. That allows me to move where my transmitting is in case I find out that somebody moved in on top of me, or I moved in on, or I was in the wrong spot when I was transmitting. All the rest of this stuff I leave the way that it is, but you can change any of this stuff and still make good contacts. So feel free to play with it, hover over it, read it, and there you go. From here, I'm going to go to the audio tab because there's a bug in this version of WSJT-X. If I go into the radio tab, it'll complain that I haven't figured out the audio settings. So I'm just going to go straight to audio. I am going to drop down the audio interface list, and we are using the DigiRig today, and the DigiRig that we are using has the C Media Electronics sound chip inside of it. That's a pretty popular sound chip. The other one is the Burr Brown chip from Texas Instruments. And this is the input, so I want the one that's labeled Input C Media Electronics for the input. And then we'll do the same thing for the output. Scroll down to the bottom, and I want the C Media Electronics output. And then everything else here is fine. Change them if you want. Don't change them if you don't want to. No problem. Now we can go to the radio tab. Under the radio tab, I want to pick the rig. Rigs are in alphabetical order, so this is going to be at the bottom. And today's rig is the Yaesu FT-818. I keep saying today's rig. I've done how to FT8 on a lot of different radios, so if you're interested in using FT8 on another radio, I've got another video for you, more than likely. And if not, let me know and we'll see what we can do about making one. So down to the Ys, Yaesu FT-818. And I don't know that it's any different in terms of cat control, but for people who have the 817 or who have the 818, you can pick the one that's appropriate. This will probably work for either one. Next thing on the list is the serial port. I need to pick the serial port, and there's only a couple of choices here. How do you know which one it is? You hover over the serial port and it tells you Silicon Labs, blah, 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 blah. That looks like what I'm looking for on the DigiRig because that's the serial controller that's inside of it. So I know that. If I hover over TTY S4, I don't get any tooltip, and if I hover over USB, it just says custom USB device, so I would have to know a little bit more than the average thing. In this case, it's TTY USB 0, and I pick that, no problem. The baud rate, we set this to 38400 in the radio, so we'll pick 38400 here. The rest of these things over here, just leave them the way they are. I do RTS for my how to PTT the radio, and I use the same port, dev TTY USB 0. I insert the RTS signal, and poof, it happens. The FT818 does not respect the data packet setting inside of WSJT-X, but I pick it anyway out of force of habit. It also doesn't support the split operation properly. It doesn't change the VFO-B frequency to be the frequency that you want. So you can either use none or you can use fake it. I choose fake it. It's going to change the VFO-A frequency over during transmit to center in the passband the signal that I'm sending out. And then I'm going to hit test cat. And I can hear the radio click, but this light, this button is supposed to turn green on successful test cat. And a lot of times it doesn't do that. So I heard the radio click. I know these settings are right. We're good to go here. I'm going to go over to the reporting tab. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm going to press the test PTT and look at my radio. And I should see it go into PTT mode. So the red light came on and it did the thing. We're good to go there on both CAT and PTT control. So now I can go to the reporting tab. Under the reporting tab, I like it to prompt me to log QSO. We will see this after we do a QSO later on in the video, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why I like to do that there. I also like to enable PSK spotter reporting. We're going to go over the PSKReporter spotting after we make a QSO because we have to have something sent up to spot. I'm going to use TCP IP connection instead of using a UDP connection. That means I'm guaranteeing that my data is getting up to the PSKReporter website. If I use UDP, it just sends the data, and if they get it, they get it, and if they don't, they don't, and if they get something that's not quite understandable, whatever, you know. So I enable PSKReporter spotting, and I use a TCP IP connection for that. And then the rest of these settings you don't need to change, but you can if you'd like to. And I'm going to hit OK. Now that we have all the WSJT-X software settings set up, we have some settings to make in the radio. Let's get over there and make all of the radio-specific settings.
This is a Yaesu radio, so there are tons of settings that need to be configured inside of this radio through some very deep menus. So we're going to do the F menu. We're going to hit F once, and we're going to rotate this select knob around. The first one that we're looking for is noise blanker. And we want to turn noise blanker off unless we actually have a very specific reason to have it on. So there's noise blanker. Tap it. You see the arrow means that it's on. Tap it again, and the arrow means that it's off. Next setting is AGC. And AGC is set to fast. There's a couple of different ways to do this. You can set it to off. And if you set it to off, then you have to configure your RF gain and a bunch of other settings manually. So it's better in this radio's case to set it to fast because I was unable, the controls are so touchy that I was unable to get it to have the right setting. So I set it to AGC fast. And you know, why not take it on Easy Street? Next setting is to turn off split, in case you had that on. So we're going to rotate this control around until we see SPL, and SPL is on, and you can see split on the bottom, or hit it again, and SPL is off. So if this isn't displaying, that's still the option that's hidden behind there. So you can see the split icon showing up and disappearing there. Or you can do it that way. Just a couple of different ways to do that. The next one that we want to turn off is IPO, Intercept Point Optimization. So we'll turn that off, make sure that's off. And then we also want to make sure that this narrow setting is off, it's not allowed. And then the attenuation setting needs to be turned off. Now that we have all of the regular F menu settings chosen, we need to go into the deep F menu. And we do that by holding down the F key until we pop into there. I'm going to go back around to the beginning of the settings. And the first setting that we need to change is setting number 14. So I'm going to turn to 14, and 14 is cat rate. Set this to 38,400. If you're using the LDG Z817 tuner, that's the cat rate that is expected for the tuner to use, and we might as well just keep it the way it's supposed to be. The next one I want to do is number 24. Number 24 is dig display. This is the frequency offset. We're going to set that to 0 so that it doesn't display a different frequency on the screen of the radio than what is inside of the computer. 25 is dig mic. And you can fool around with this setting while you are looking at the power meter. I'm pointing to the power meter that's just off the screen there. Anything above 10 is going to work out well for you. And this is how you're going to get more power out. Setting it above its ability to hear isn't going to get you any more power, so that's why I say somewhere above 10. Mine's currently set to 65, and that's above 10, so it's fine. Next setting is 26. Dig mode, you want to set dig mode to user U. So that would be upper sideband, and it's a user setting as opposed to a packet mode or an FM mode or any other kind of mode. This would be dig for the rear, and then U for USB. And then the next one up is 27, dig shift, and we're not going to shift the incoming frequency any, we're going to leave that at 0 hertz. And that's it for the deep F settings. There's not as many settings in this Yaesu radio as there are in others. Long press the F button to save those settings and get back out, and you're good to go. A quick note about power settings on this radio. Most of the time I run my radios flat out. I run them with as much power as they can handle going out and handle all the cooling and everything externally, or whatever I need to do in order to make that safe. This radio, I don't think it was designed with this kind of duty cycle in mind, full on FT8 at a full 6 watts for as long as humanly possible. I'm not saying it's a bad design, I'm saying that other radios have built-in cooling or external cooling features or those kind of things, and this radio doesn't. So I want you to be sensitive to the cooling needs of the radio when you're using it. I would not run this radio at its full 6 watt power output. I would be happy at 2 to 3 watts, or I would be happy with running this into an external amplifier. But manage the heat, and then have as much fun as you want once you take care of all that heat.
So the next thing I need to do is change frequencies to a viable FT8 frequency and bring my waterfall back up and see if we're getting decodes on the waterfall. Oh, I also need to be in mode FT8. All right, so now my radio says 14074, and I am starting to get some signals into the waterfall, but there's something wrong with this. This only shows me from 0 to 1200, and as you know, upper sideband is 3 kilohertz. So I need to make some changes there. So I'm going to change this bins per pixel from 2 to something that shows me about 3000, and that is bins per pixel 5. So now I have a 3000 hertz wide waterfall on my screen. Fantastic. We've got some decodes over here, but this is a little cluttered. There's a lot of people on FT8 modes now, and so I click this CQ only. So it's going to show me the CQs only the next time we do a full decode. And you can see down here it's running 15 seconds through a decode. As it gets close to the end, it starts actually bringing in decodes. And these are just the people that are calling CQ currently after we did all the filtering. While we're looking at this, there's a couple of columns up here that make sense. So UTC is the time in UTC. dB is the signal strength that you are hearing that person at. DT is the delta time. I'm not 100% sure that's what DT stands for, but it's a pretty logical, reasonable guess, and I'm okay with that answer. So DT is delta time. Anything in the 0 to 0.2 or 0.3 is going to be able to make you a contact. I see this 1.2 here. This person's 1.2 seconds off. They're going to have a little bit of trouble making contacts. How do you know that your time is okay? There is a website that I will show you called time.is. And if you go there, time.is in a browser, it says your time is exact. It's grabbed my location based on my internet service provider's backwards IP, reverse IP lookup. And that's the town down the street. That's close enough. But my time is exact at 4:27 with 0.026 seconds, 0.022 off. So it's fine. It's close enough to get the job done, so we're getting the job done. We're happy with that. So we go back into WSJT-X. Remember on the general tab in the settings where we said double-click sets transmit enable? I'm going to pick a nice high signal NF3R. That's my friend Joel. I'm going to try and contact him. I'm 7 seconds into a 15-second window here, so he may or may not hear me on this, but we'll give it a couple of seconds and see what happens. Because I don't have, oh, he heard me. Because I don't have hold TX frequency selected, when I double clicked on his contact, it jumped me over to his frequency down here in the waterfall for transmit and for receive. And so now we're making a contact. And luckily you can see that he was just calling CQ and then nothing, CQ, nothing, CQ, nothing, CQ, nothing, CQ, then me. And because I'm transmitting, that portion of the waterfall is now gone because you can't talk and listen at the same time, much like real life. All right, and we have logged a QSO with my friend Joel here, and I'm going to put in my transmit power. I've got a power meter on this, and it's telling me 4.7 watts, and I'm going to make a comment. I like to put in FT-818, my rig, and my antenna, which is DX Commander, and then I click these retain boxes for the session, and every time it pops up to log me a QSO, I'll be able to see all this new information. This stuff here will be retained until the next session starts. So 4.7 watts on an FT-818 using a DX Commander antenna. I sent him a signal report of +7. I received a signal report of -19. So he didn't hear me as well as I heard him. I heard him, so 0 is like no noise at all. I heard him 7 above noise, and he heard me 19 below noise. So that's one of the magic things about FT8 is how well you can hear things. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that's going to log it out to my disk, and we'll be fantastically good to go there. If I wanted to call out, you need to follow the standard DX code of conduct. So I need to look or listen, and it's really hard to listen with FT8 to see if there's a clear frequency. All of these vertical stripes here are different signals with different signal intensity down here in this waterfall area. And each one of them is 50 hertz wide. So how am I going to hear that with my ear? I can't. So I can see it with my eyeballs, and I can see that this spot here at about 2010 hertz is free. So I'm going to right click on that right above the waterfall, and I'm going to say set RX and TX offset. Then I'm going to say hold TX frequency so I don't move around. And now that I know that that space is clear on both sides of the conversation, I'm going to go ahead and hit enable TX with macro number 6 checked, and that's going to call CQ. So we've made one successful hunt and pounce. Now we're going to make a successful contact, and we're waiting until the next over, and it's now our turn, and we are transmitting our call. All right, we got somebody. All right, and here is that prompt me to log QSO screen that popped up again, and you can see that it retained the settings from the last time. This time I sent a -12. I didn't hear KF0JJJ as well, and I received a -04. So KF0JJJ heard me a lot better than NF3R did. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to log away. Now here comes something that's really neat. This is one of my favorite things about running FT8 is PSKReporter. And if I look into PSKReporter, all bands, I want to show all bands, all signals sent and received by the call sign of KM9G, who is me, FT8, over the last 15 minutes. I'm going to hit go. And look at that. I've got a ton of these. Let me zoom in. Every time you see one of these reports that has, like this happened in the last 2 minutes, and it was a +8 dB report. That is someone who has an active station that has actively heard my signal being transmitted. This part here in the center is actually where I am physically located. And then you can see this, they call it the pink blob. Kind of, you know, we name stuff. It's hard to name stuff. This pink blob is what the PSKReporter website has taken as a best guess of what my best radiating path is. I'm currently on 20 meters. You can see that it's not going up, it's only going down. Well, let's zoom out and see what's going on up there. It's not going up because north of me is Canada, and the parts of Canada that are populated are inside of my skip zone, so they're not hearing me. And then the other parts of Canada probably aren't on FT8 that much, so that's why you're not getting heard there. If I was down in Texas, I would probably have a big circle in the middle, like this size right here, and I would have QSOs in a 360-degree circle. So stay tuned for when I go to Texas and I make one of these videos, and we'll demonstrate that instead.
All right, that is how easy it is to get FT8 done on the Doomsday Radio, on the FT818. There are links for the DigiRig in the description down below. There's links for the red Thingiverse 3D printed rails in the description down below. There's a bunch of other stuff that I use with this radio that will also be linked. There's links for WSJT-X, there's links for how to check your system time, how to check your signal strength reports, and map, and all that other fantastic stuff. There is also a link for a printable cheat sheet on how to get everything set up on your radio. So hopefully with all of the information that I've just downloaded into your brain, you'll be able to get onto FT8 with the FT818 quickly and easily. There is a video right over here I think you'll enjoy next. Thanks for being awesome. I'll see you over there.